I'd like to call the meeting to order. Okay, if we take roll call.
Commissioner Aceves,
Here.
Commissioner Geyer,
Here.
Commissioner Ishkanian, Commissioner Lavanino, Commissioner Morehouse, Commissioner Richardson, Commissioner Stark, Commissioner Welt,
Here.
Commissioner Wolf.
Here.
Let the record reflect Commissioner Richardson is absent.
Okay, does everybody would join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, a motion to approve the minutes for the December 8th meeting.
So moved.
Okay, moved and seconded. Roll call vote.
Commissioner Aceves.
Aye.
Commissioner Lavanino.
You were there.
Commissioner Morehouse. Commissioner Welt.
Aye.
Commissioner Wolf.
Aye.
Chair Geyer.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is a selection of the chair and the vice chair for 2017.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Every year at the first meeting of LAFCO, we have a rotation of the chair and vice chair, and there's generally a rotation schedule. And if we follow the schedule, then it would mean that the vice chair would move up to chairman, which is Commissioner Aceves, and that the as the city member, and then be followed by the public representative, who is Roger Welt, would be the vice chair.
Okay.
So that's the recommendation, and be happy to answer any questions you might have.
And we can make both in one motion? Okay, I'll make a motion that Roger Sebies be the chair and Roger Welp be the vice chair. Okay, a roll call vote?
Commissioner Aceves.
Aye.
Commissioner Lavanino. Commissioner Morehouse. Commissioner Welt.
Aye.
Commissioner Wolf.
Aye.
Chair Geyer.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay. I guess this year's going to be the Roger and Roger show. Next item is public comment period. Do we have any members of the audience that would like to speak to us today?
Chair Aceves and members of the commission, we have 2 requests to speak today. We are going to begin with Randall Day, to be followed by Winston Craven. Randall?
This is just a brief check-in to say that the Los Olivos Water Reclamation Group is still in motion. We've just this morning provided a number of additional documents that were needed for our application. And I know there's not a specific item on the agenda today, but we just wanted to check in to say that we're still engaged, still working, and still available to move ahead with this process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next request to speak is Winston Craven.
Hi, board members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'd like to propose to you the advantages of a shared wastewater facility for Los Olivos, Ballard, and San Ynez. I gave you a handout. I listed the advantages that I see in that. For one, Los Olivos construction costs would drop by $2.1 million. This would take place. And beyond that, the operating and management budget would drop considerably over the years to come. The first thing that would take place would be a trunk line that would run from the southern border of Los Olivos to Ballard. I'd like to point out that it's only 0.8 of a mile that far. It's further from 154 to the south border of Los Olivos. If that were to take place, it would cost Los Olivos $1.7 million using the budget that's in the ACOM engineering report. At the point it reached Ballard, 30% of the cost from that point on would be Ballard's cost and 70% would be Los Olivos' cost. The distance between Ballard and Sunnyfield Park is 2.2 miles. And Ballard's cost at that point would be $1.4 million, and Los Olivos' cost would be $3.2 million. That, of course, doesn't take into consideration a collection system for Ballard. That would have to be designed and cost talking. The total at this point would be $13 million for Los Olivos and $1.4 million for Ballard. San Ynez estimates that it could build a plant that would be a 500,000 gallon plant that would cover the 1,753 parcels and hookups that would be involved in those three communities. At that cost, Los Olivos' total, well, let's see, Los Olivos would be spending another $5.7 million to pay for their share of that plant. Ballard would pay $1.72 million for that share of that plant. San Ynez would pay $17.57 million. That added up is still $2.1 million less for Los Olivos. The real savings come in the operating and maintenance for all the communities if that plant were to be built. As you can see in some of the things that I passed on from the engineering report, Los Olivos at the point where all those pipelines...
Okay, so your time's up.
Yeah,
Thank you very much. We do have the material that you're presenting.
Good. I hope you read it.
Thank you very much. Any other speakers?
Chair Seves and members of the commission, that was our final speaker.
Okay, would you move on to the consent calendar, please? We don't read them. I forgot about that. Okay, does the any commissioners want to pull anything from the consent calendar? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I'll move it as presented.
Do I have a second? Okay, moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Guyer? Commissioner Lavanino? Commissioner Morehouse? Commissioner Welt?
Aye.
Commissioner Wolf? Chair Seves?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Go on to item B1. Okay. We will call you back. Commissioner Guyer is stepping down.
Chair Seves and members of the commission, business item number 1 is to approve a certificate of completion confirming the November 8, 2016 election results in favor of LAFCO file 1507 for the formation of the Isla Vista Community Services District.
Mr. Chair, just for the record, Ms. Ishkanian will be a voting member on this
She's
item.
now the voting member.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, while Commissioner Ishkanian is moving up to the podium, let me summarize briefly why this item is on your agenda. Cortese-Knox-Hertzberg Act delegates the authority to the executive officer to file most certificates of completion. However, where there is an election, it defers in Government Code Section 57-176 to the commission to execute within 30 days of the canvass of the election results a certificate of completion. We have prepared, I have, and with the assistance of legal counsel, a certificate of completion that contains all of the items that are required by the Cortese-Knox-Hertzberg Act as Exhibit A to your staff report. And basically, this is affirming the election results that County Clerk Joe Holland canvassed and presented on December 6th. So we're close to the 30 days, pretty close. almost exactly 30 days, and the election results are contained in Attachment B. The Isla Vista Community Services District was approved by the registered voters, 87.14% in favor and 12.86% in opposition. However, the measure for the utility user tax did not pass. It required a 2/3 vote, 66.66%, and only received 61.22%. So in summary, the certificate of completion will be filed with the county recorder's office within the next day or so, and it affirms the votes in favor of the Isla Vista Community Services District and will not issue anything in terms of the utility user tax, which was a separate issue. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to respond to the commission at this point.
Any questions of staff?
I have a question.
Ms. Wolf?
Thank you. I'm not sure if this is, it's not a question based on everything you said, but it may be a correction. On the certificate of completion that you provided us, in the first paragraph, it references Attachment A. And I think what it should say, I think it should reference Exhibit B, because we don't have an Attachment A in our folder.
Mr. Dillon?
Commissioner Wolf, the way it's set up, and it could have been maybe a little more clear, but Attachment A to the certificate is actually the certificate by the county clerk, registrar of voters. That's Attachment A to the certificate. But the certificate is Exhibit A to the staff report, and Attachment A probably didn't need to be labeled Exhibit B to the staff report because it's part of the certificate. But I think the reference is correct because that Attachment A reference, if you look at the certificate by the county clerk recorder, it is you'll see an Attachment A. Perhaps not the best layout of attachment labels, but
Okay.
the one that is recorded
but that
by...
clarifies it, so
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Lavanino, your light's on?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I don't know if this is a question for you or for Mr. Holland, but so the CSD is formed with no funding, but when's the shot clock start on the people's terms? Are they still elected even though they have no funding? Or when are their terms, or do they actually have terms, or does it wait until it gets funded, or how does that work?
Well, the effective date of the formation as contained in the LAFCO resolution is March 1st, 2017. So although they were elected on November 8th, the district does not become effective until March 1st. And so their terms, there's a way of selecting terms, and I don't know if legal counsel wants to...
So I guess my question is, so their terms could end before they ever received any funding?
Yes.
Okay.
Usually 2- and 4-year terms. Okay.
Mr. Morehouse?
Well, I guess, yeah, there's a lot of questions about this, all answered today, but, so we have a CSD that's been formed, but there is no funding. So what are they going to do? What powers do they have to do with no money as a CSD? Can somebody answer that?
Well, they're a CSD under California law. They have a duly elected board of directors, and plus 2 other board members who, of course, are one appointed by the Board of Supervisors and one appointed by UCSB. I don't believe so.
I think the board is going to appoint next Tuesday on the 10th, as I understand it, although I could be wrong on that, Mike, do you know? The board members for the Isla Vista CSD, the one board member.
The supervisors have
The
one appointment.
supervisor.
Has that been calendared yet? I
I don't
know.
believe it's
I don't
on
think it
our
has.
agenda, but I can't say with certainty because I haven't seen the agenda.
No.
For the appointments as far as the 10th, no, that's not a part of that. And the CEO's office is working on coming to the Board of Supervisors sometime in late January or February with a larger report on the CSD and the appointments.
And I know that before the supervisors make the appointment, they have to post a notice of vacancy of the office to give, I think, people an opportunity to come forward and volunteer for the. But anyway, that's not happened yet. They can do anything authorized under state law. However, as you're pointing out, how much can you do without money? If they get any proceeds or monies donated to them, they could spend that money. But if they do come into any sort of money, they would have to adopt a budget, both for the appropriation of the money and the expenditure of that money, because of course, as any public agency is required, they have to operate under an approved budget. But right now, probably they'd be limited to appointing or naming officers, trying to figure out if they can hire some staff. And the question, of course, is going to be, how do you hire staff if you don't have money? So they have some daunting challenges in front of them, and I, quite frankly, don't know how they're going to do it. But
since they voted not to fund this district, do they have the power to borrow money? It seems like because the people said, no, we're not funding it, that would take away their ability to borrow. But as a CSD can borrow. So, conundrum.
well, legally they can borrow money, but I don't know how many institutions will loan you money if you have no assets or sources of income. So they have a little bit of a chicken and the egg issue there. Mr. Hood's more of a financial person, so I don't know if he wants to comment on that. But
Well, I think that's a good question, because I don't think there's any loans that would be available to a district that doesn't have a revenue stream to repay those loans. The individual board members could do it as private citizens if they wanted to. But again, I point out that this AB3 set up this mechanism and divided the two issues that LAFCO approved into formation of the district and approval of the utility user tax. We didn't have any discretion as LAFCO to change that formula or combine the two issues. And I think, knowing that the utility user tax was going to be a tough measure to get passed because it requires a 2/3 vote, whereas the formation only required a majority vote and got 87%. Was not an issue that we created. It was created by legislative mandate and signed into the Community Services District law.
So, anyways, I'll just go and make one last statement, and that's, at least for now, on this issue. And that is relative to LAFCO issues, this has to be one of the worst piece of state legislature I've ever seen come down. And this is the poster child legislation for why the California state legislators should stay out of the business of forming local governments, because there's a lot of problems down the road, and AB3 and forming the CSD does not even come close to solving the issues that plague Isla Vista. And I hope people will come out of the shell of thinking that the CSD is going to solve these issues that it said that it was going to solve, but there's a lot more work that needs to be done in the Isla Vista area. And I'm sorry to see them going down this road.
Mr. Stark.
Yes, if I might, Mr. Chair, if I could ask our clerk, is the Board of Supervisors going to consider what might be done about this particular community services district between now and the time, the effective date, or are they just going to consider limiting their action to appointing their person?
I think the plan at this point is to come to the board in the next 30 days or so with a report on the CSD and the issues facing the CSD, including the appointment, and also we were looking at assisting the CSD and at least getting up and running and having an initial meeting so that they can sort of move forward a little bit. And so obviously, you've laid out all the issues regarding their lack of revenue stream. There is some money out there from UCSB, but my understanding is that money cannot be used for staff. And so that's where we are.
That just through the chair, that just raises an issue. Are you saying that the county of Santa Barbara is going to now fund this CSD, or at least give it startup funds?
No, I'm not suggesting that at all. The only thing that I'm aware of right now is that we're looking at possibly helping them, at least on some level, put together an initial meeting, which is required statutorily. But that's as far as I know at this point.
But staff resources cost money. I mean, this is supposed to be a CSD issue up there and not the county of Santa Barbara. So I'd be really surprised if the county of Santa Barbara starts expending money to run this CSD. You know, who's going to be running the shop over there?
If I could, Mr. Chair. This item hasn't come before the Board of Supervisors, so I would just suggest that, comments that may or may not happen, I think may be premature at this point, and that we should look forward to a letter or board letter coming from our CEO that will lay out what, if anything, the board's options are. So I hate for us to start moving down this path without us coming to the Board of Supervisors first.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I might. My concern was precisely that somebody in the county family look into starting this organization and raising the issue. There's a whole ton of issues. And if I'm assured that the board's at least going to look at it, that would satisfy me at this point. I don't think we have anything to do with it.
I think that's the important part is what LAFCO's responsibility is in this process. As a CSD, they have certain statutory requirements, such as legal counsel. So that stuff's going to have to be paid for, but that's not for us to opine on it. We're here just to make sure the process goes forward. So my question to Mr. Hood is, the next time, well, first of all, first question is, this won't come to us again. Are we done as far as a commission with dealing with this item?
Yes.
Other than the reviews?
Yes, and the certificate of completion, normally, as I mentioned, I would sign that and file it with the county recorder. Because there's an election, the commission needs to approve this certificate of completion based on the election results. And that's your final action on this matter.
Okay, then my final question has to deal with the utility tax. The Board of Supervisors will put that on the ballot again every general election or every November? How does that work?
Yeah, it needs to be approved at an election by, I think it's 2023. I'm just trying to think if it's March of 2023, January 1st of 2023, and it's not specific to if it needs to be a general election or if it needs to just be approved at an election.
Okay, because I think that's important for the information. Mr. Asano, do you want to go ahead and opine on this? I mean, what is the next steps for the county, and also when will the public see this, or the Advistians see this on the ballot again?
So thank you, Chair. I don't want to opine. That's council's role, but I could state
from your position.
Yeah, sure. I state from Dennis Bazanich from the County Executive Officer and Deputy CEO here. As Mr. Allen just mentioned, the board will be considering a board item coming up later this month to just get a status update on the formation of the district, and primarily to look at the options for filling the board of supervisors slot on that particular board. But as Supervisor Wolf, Commissioner Wolf correctly stated, best not to talk further on those issues. My understanding going forward, though, in terms of the utility users tax that you just raised, Chair, it would appear that the CSD would be responsible for bringing forward a future ballot initiative to consider that UUT. Given that they would be now an entity of their own that would be seeking that tax measure and with voter approval.
And when would that take place? And when's the earliest opportunity for him to get a new vote on that?
I believe the earliest would be June 2018.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the commission? Mr. Welch, Santa Maria, any questions?
Mr. Chair, you answered my questions. I was curious about the utility user tax and how many times they could put that on the ballot and what was the protocol for putting it on the ballot. So thank you for that information.
Okay, so may I have a motion to approve the certificate of completion? Mr. Lavanino, do I have a second to approve the certificate? And we have a second.
Second.
Okay, so Lavanino and Wolf, and could I have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Ishganian? Commissioner Lavanino? Commissioner Morehouse?
Abstain.
Commissioner Welch?
Aye.
Commissioner Wolf?
Aye.
Chair Aceves?
Aye, motion passed.
Motion passes.
Yes, could we invite Mr. Geyer back, please?
Chair Aceves and members of the commission, informational item number 1 is to receive and file a report on the Cal LAFCO Legislative Committee meeting held on December 16, 2016.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is just an information item of some of the matters that were looked at and discussed at the Cal LAFCO Legislative Committee meeting held on the 16th of December. There was, as you'll notice, there's several items that were proposed to be included in the omnibus bill, but the Cal LAFCO, and this is kind of information that you may not know, and it was kind of revealed at the meeting, is that the Cal LAFCO Board of Directors decided not to sponsor an omnibus bill in 2017, and that any items that would be outstanding would come back potentially in 2018. So these items A through N would not be included in the omnibus bill because there will not be one. Last year, there was a considerable amount of information and time spent by Cal LAFCO staff and legislative committee members on the omnibus bill, and they decided not to go ahead and do that because of the time-intensive nature of this, and that they are pretty much administrative matters, typos, and different things, and if they are something that needs to be carried in a special bill, then they would be proposed by that LAFCO or by Cal LAFCO. So that's pretty much it as far as the Cal LAFCO Legislative Committee meeting. I'll be, again, participating on your behalf on the committee throughout the 2017 timeframe and advising you of items that come back. Mainly, they'll be monitoring items that affect LAFCOs rather than bills that we will be sponsoring. So we'll be responding to bills that are proposed by various legislators and by the areas around the state, and I'll advise you of that and bring back items through your SB LAFCO Legislative Committee, which will be on your agenda next month for appointments.
Perfect. Any questions to Mr. Hood? All right, thank you. We'll move on to commissioner announcements or requests for future agenda items. Do we have any commissioner announcements? Commissioner Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Hood, can you provide us at some point with an outline of where we go or what our plans are with this whole Los Olivos wastewater issue? You know, I mean, I don't know if you could do it now. It may not be the right time to do it, but at some point, provide us with maybe a pathway of where we're going and a calendar or, you know, some idea of,
Right.
of how we resolve this issue.
I will bring that back at the next meeting. It's not agendized right now, but we are processing the application and are ready to send the petitions over to the elections office for checking and validation. So that's where we are with it. But I'll bring back a timeline at the next meeting.
And then how does that fit in, though, with did we not have an application for a sphere?
We have, again, this is
Okay,
it's not on the agenda, so I don't want to
Okay,
get
well,
into
I
too
get,
much
so that
detail.
just goes to my basic question. That's why I was saying looks like, it feels like we're maybe on parallel paths. So you touched on one piece of it. So if maybe you can come back and bring us information on the entire status. I mean, to not talk about both when it comes back, I think, that's the reality of what we're hearing. So just come back and give us a full report.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, let's move on to executive officer's comments.
Mr. Chairman, I have one issue, well, actually a couple of issues that are just information. But it came to my attention that the Cal LAFCO staff workshop is going to be held on April 6th, which is, well, actually it's the 5th through the 7th. Our commission meeting is on April 6th. So I'm proposing, if you're willing to do that, to postpone our April commission meeting to April 13th. And if that is something that you would want us to look at, because I would like to attend the Cal LAFCO staff workshop. Generally, it's at the end of the month, like our conference was, and it means that if we don't change it, then I would not be able to attend, and that wouldn't be the end of the world. But if we can change the meeting till the 13th, which is 1 week later, that would be my preference.
Okay, does anybody have a problem with moving it to the 13th?
I don't have a problem with that.
So
It's just-
the
it'd be
direction-
a week later.
But I think maybe we should ask the clerk to check with all members of LAFCO to ensure that we can all do that.
And Mr. Hood, of course, is just making the comment, and absent objection, he's going to agendize this for next month to amend your schedule of regular meetings to.
But I just wanted to find out if we had any
So
conflicts to do that.
Yes, and he could do
Okay,
that
so-
way everybody will weigh in.
Okay, so right now, we're looking at the 13th, but you'll bring it back for commission discussion
In February.
in February. Okay.
And I did meet with the grand jury. I usually meet with them once a year, and met with them, had about an hour-long discussion on various LAFCO issues and brought them up to speed on what LAFCO is all about and what we do, and some of the issues that we are facing and have faced recently, in the past year or so. And I was going to give, I will bring back the Los Olivos CSD and the Santa Ynez sphere of influence issue at the next meeting. I was going to actually mention that to you in my executive officer comments. And that concludes my comments, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Hood. Any other questions for Mr. Hood? Okay. Seeing none, I'm going to adjourn this meeting. Our next meeting will be February 2nd in Santa Maria.